Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Defence Force Academy is Midshipman Kieran Armitage. Today, we commemorate Malaya and Borneo Veterans Day and recognise the Australian military personnel who fought in the Malayan emergency from 1948 to 1960 and the Indonesian confrontation from 1962 to 1966. The Malayan emergency was declared on the 18th of June 1948 after the murder of 3 European estate managers by guerrillas working for the Malaysian Communist Party. While the British commitment was largely a politically driven hearts and minds campaign conducted to bring Malayans on side, troops were also committed to fight the counterinsurgency. In 1955, the Australian Army was committed. 2 RAR was supported by the 105 Field Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. 3 RAR and A Field Battery replaced them in 1957, conducting successful operations which led to the state of Perak being declared secure in 1959. While the Malayan emergency was officially declared over on the 31st of July 1960, limited communist guerrilla activity continued for some years afterwards. In the early to mid-1960s, Indonesia and Malaysia fought an undeclared war which came to involve troops from Australia, Britain and New Zealand. Under the leadership of President Sukarno, who opposed the formation of the Federation of Malaysia, Indonesian forces carried out armed incursions, subversions and sabotage to destabilise the Federation. Fighting began in earnest when Indonesia launched a series of cross-border raids into Malaysian territory in early 1963. Australia's commitment to operations against Indonesia in Borneo and West Malaysia began with 3 RAR and 1 SAS squadron deploying to Surik and Brunei in early 1965, where they fought as a part of the larger British force. 4 RAR and 2 SAS squadron served in Surik in 1966. Australia also sent detachments from the Royal Australian Signals Corps, an artillery detachment, and 5 squadrons from the Royal Australian Engineers to Borneo. Ships of the Royal Australian Navy served in the surrounding waters, and several Royal Australian Air Force squadrons were also involved. As Australia and Indonesia maintained their diplomatic relationship, these cross-border operations remained secret until 1996, and confrontation received little coverage in the Australian press. Continuing negotiations between Indonesia and Malaysia ended the conflict, and the 2 sides signed a peace treaty in Bangkok in August 1966. Today, we pay our respects to the Australians who died as a result of their service during the Malaysian emergency and the Indonesian confrontation, who are commemorated here on the Roll of Honour, and to the survivors who returned home. Shortly, we will hear the story of Sergeant Keith Henry Ewald, who died while serving in the Malayan emergency in January 1956. This evening, we warmly welcome Mr. Ian Davenport, President of the Australian Capital Territory and New South Wales Malaya and Borneo Veterans Association, and Air Commodore Mark Lax, retired, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Club Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Abercorn State School from Queensland. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, all let us
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant Keith Henry Ewald. Keith Ewald was born on the 23rd of November 1932 in Bundaberg, Queensland, to Heinrich Henry Carl Ewald and Anne-Marie Rakow. He grew up in Bundaberg, where he attended Airy Park State School. Keith left school after completing Year 6, most likely due to the lack of workers in the local cane fields caused by the Second World War. He went to work with his father as a labourer and a cane cutter on the Haytersbury plantation. In his spare time, he trained cattle dogs and family dogs. He also loved fishing, surfing, and reading. During his late teens, Ewald met Noella Walsh, and the two began a relationship. He began his national service training on the 4th of January 1952 serving with Charlie Company, 11th National Service Training Battalion. However, having grown up during the Second World War, and with the Korean War dominating the news since June 1950, he wanted to serve in the Australian Regular Army. At the end of his successful enlistment process, one of his examiners described him as an excellent type of lad, keen on army. He was discharged from national service on the 27th of March and enlisted into the regular army the following day. After completing his training in May, he was posted to the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, or 2RAR, at Puckapunyal in Victoria. At this stage, the battalion was preparing for deployment to Korea. His leadership potential was identified by his superiors, and in late October, Ewald was promoted to temporary corporal. 2RAR embarked for Korea aboard the transport ship New Australia, and on the 5th of March, 1953, the battalion entered the front line for the first time in May. In early June, Ewald was sent to Japan to attend a mortar course at the 1st Commonwealth Division Battle School. He completed the course in early July and returned to Korea. Only 2 days after rejoining 2RAR, the battalion moved to the Hook, one of the most dangerous positions on the front line. The battalion took part in the final battle of the war from the 24th to the 26th of July, where the Chinese launched an entire division attack on the adjacent United States Marines and on 2RAR. The battalion remained in Korea after the armistice. Ewald's rank of corporal was confirmed in September 1954, and he was promoted to acting sergeant at the end of the year. The battalion returned to Australia in April 1954. Ewald and Noella were married that August, and when time allowed, settled into married life. From the 22nd of October 1954 until the 30th of May 1955, Ewald attended all of the requisite promotion courses to qualify him for sergeant and warrant officer ranks. He was promoted to sergeant on the 1st of July, becoming a platoon sergeant of 2RAR's mortar platoon. By this time, Australia had increased its commitment of forces to the Malayan emergency, and 2RAR was selected to be Australia's initial infantry component. The battalion embarked from Sydney on the 1st of September aboard New Australia, the same transport ship that had taken 2RAR to and from Korea. The ship travelled via Townsville to Penang, where the men disembarked on the 17th of September. The men spent the rest of the year in training, and in November, Ewald attended the Jungle Warfare School, followed by another mortar course. When Ewald left for Malaya, Noella went to stay with her mother in Bundaberg, although she had planned to join her husband in Malaya when accommodation became available. He had been reported in the Australian newspapers saying, "We visited almost every landlord in town, but we have drawn a blank." 2RAR spent the next several months in training. Ewald attended the Jungle Warfare School and another mortar course. Mortar platoon commenced an ambush patrol on the night of the 30th to the 31st of January. After the platoon had set up its ambush area, Ewald got up and whilst moving amongst the ambush position, was accidentally shot by another member of the platoon. He was evacuated to the Coolum General Hospital, where he died later that night. Ewald was the Army's first fatal casualty in the Malayan emergency. He was laid to rest the following day in Kamunting Road Christian Cemetery, Taipang. He was just 23 years old. Only 2 days after his death, Noella, who was waiting on her movement orders, received a Christmas package and a letter from her husband. She had also received a telegram from the Minister of the Army notifying her that Keith had died. Her devastation can only be imagined. His name is listed on the honour roll on my left, one of the 39 Australians who died as a result in the service in the Malayan emergency. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant Keith Henry Ewald, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.